Well, it's a tremendous pleasure to be able to introduce John Montgomery. As many of you remember, he spoke to us on in March in 2013, and he hit me right in the middle of my head with an idea that I had never heard of. And all of a sudden, I saw possibilities that we could have a humanistic economic system, and this is the way it has to be done. And I'm hoping that there are many things going on, but I hope that maybe we can rally together and set up some pressure groups to help corporations make the right choice, because with the kind of COs we tend to have, it's not going to necessarily happen easily. But at any rate, because of the great meeting that I had with John, I thought this needed to be written up, and so I worked with the Humanist magazine to have an article in our current Humanist magazine, the May-June, that he wrote for that. It's a great article. I'm sure he'll cover some of that in his talk, but at any rate, it's a pleasure to have him here with us. Also, there's the URL where you can see the article. In fact, it's in the write-up thing that's on your table or whatever, except for the last part. Forget that. At any rate, here's John. Thank you.
Thank you, Art. Well, it's a real pleasure to be back here again this year. And the topic of my remarks today are the benefit corporation, global consciousness, and how you guys can co-create a sustainable economic system. And I want to start by just acknowledging what an impact this group already had indirectly. Art was very kind in inviting me to talk to you guys last year, and the video that you took of my talk went somewhere on the web where it's been found by numerous people. And as a result, I've been asked to talk in places like Indianapolis and Cleveland and other venues, in fact all over the world, European Parliament in February, as kind of a spokesperson for the emerging sustainable global economic system. So, but for the opportunity to talk to you all last year and the excellent video that got created, none of this would have happened. So you've already had a big influence in spreading the meme of sustainability, and that's really what I'm here to serve, is the meme of global consciousness and a sustainable economic system. So thank you all very much for having me back. I recognize many of you from last year, so what I thought I would do is briefly give you a state of the paradigm shift. And I think a year ago, I felt that the shift in paradigm to a sustainable economic system was a possibility. And what I've concluded in the last year, based on information that I'll share with you, is that the paradigm shift has already taken place. It's game over, and at some point in the next 5, 10, 15 years, it will become apparent that the world has moved to creating a more sustainable global economic system. It won't be the be-all and end-all, but it will be very different from what we have today. And so this year I prepared a slide deck. So what I'll do is I'll just walk you through and briefly remind you of the principles of benefit corporations. I'm not going to take you through the whole detailed history of how we ended up with a global economic system populated by corporations that don't have a social or environmental conscience. You guys can read about that in the Humanist article. So I just want to bring you up to date and then talk about the global consciousness that really is emerging, that is underpinning this drive towards sustainability. And finally, suggest some further ways that you can help co-create the sustainable economic system that's coming. Let's see. Space bar. There we go. So I got involved earlier last year with a project in Europe called the Sustainable Companies Project. And a group of academics from European Union companies spent 4 years studying the corporation and trying to determine what the biggest impediment to a sustainable global economic system is. And what they concluded was that Milton Friedman's maxim that the corporation exists solely to maximize profit for shareholders is really the biggest impediment to creating a global economic system. And part of what's hidden in that belief is that it's morally acceptable to externalize as many of the negative consequences of corporate behavior as is legally permissible on society and the environment. This is, in effect, the default moral conscience of every corporation on the planet in the current economic system. This is what the system defaults to. And I'm not going to go into the history of how we ended up in the 21st century using a corporate form that was designed for commerce in the Middle Ages that has no legal architecture to support a social and environmental conscience. You can read about that in the epilogue of my book, Right from the Start, which you can download for free from the book's website, and I'll give you the details on that later. But this thought, this sponsoring thought, is the root cause of the behavior that we see in the entire global economic system today. Why? Because these beliefs make the corporation prone to sociopathic behavior. And because the conscience that corporations have today is limited to being profit-oriented. And that's what boards of directors feel they are required to use to run their businesses. So the second biggest impediment to a sustainable global economic system is kind of a surprising thing, in my opinion. It's corporate lawyers. There's 6 million corporations in America. There's a like number in Europe. And we are all of these corporations are advised by guys like me. We advise boards of directors. All of us went to law schools, and people with MBAs went to business schools where this Milton Friedman view of the corporation, where it exists solely to maximize profit for shareholders, has been bought into completely without question. And so, we lawyers end up unwittingly be maintaining the status quo. And if a board of directors wants to consider corporate social responsibility or whatever, there's this countervailing force, because the professional advisor class has bought into the notion that the corporation exists solely to maximize profit for shareholders, and the fiduciary duty of the directors is to maximize profit above all else. So, we lawyers are sworn to uphold the laws of our particular jurisdiction. So we're, part of what has to happen in creating a sustainable economic system is lawyers have to be woken up out of their slumber to really think about the corporate forms that we're advising our clients to use. So in the new sustainable economic paradigm, the corporation will exist to optimize profit and good. This is a fundamental shift. Corporations in the new paradigm will have a triple bottom line consciousness, profit, people, and planet. And what this does is, on a consciousness level, it takes corporations from being fairly egocentric entities that are focused on their own economic survival without consequence or consideration of society and the environment, to entities that are much more focused on the collective and ultimately the planet. And so there's an underlying shift in consciousness inherent in this paradigm shift from egocentricity to planet centricity. And corporations in the new paradigm will have a social and environmental conscience that transcends and includes the profit-oriented one. This is a really, really big deal. So you already know the answer to this question. What's the vehicle of the new economic paradigm? It's the benefit corporation. And the benefit corporation has the legal architecture to support and require a social and environmental conscience within corporations. And this is a really, really big deal. My belief is that this is the single most important innovation in corporate law since New York invented free incorporation and limited liability in 1811. Those inventions spawned the age of industry. They allowed capital to be invested in corporations without exposing investors to liability of partnerships. And they allowed any person that could fog a mirror to incorporate a corporation without requiring an act of legislation. So up until today, the corporation, however, didn't have any internal conscience architecture. And our legislative systems generally had the equivalent of the external conscience function for a corporation. So if a corporation misbehaved, we came up with antitrust laws, environmental laws, labor laws, securities laws to address corporations that would run amok because they have no social or environmental conscience. So what is a benefit corporation? Again, I'm going to make all of you experts on benefit corporations. They're really, really simple. And they're basically three things, and if you understand these three principles, you'll be experts in benefit corporations. So a benefit corporation is a regular for-profit corporation. It's identical to the current corporation, except it has three additional opt-in requirements. One is there's a public purpose. Second is there's a measure of transparency and accountability. So what do I mean by those? Well, in California, the public purpose requirement is reflected in the requirement that the corporation must provide a material positive impact on society and the environment from its operations taken as a whole. So again, it's a profit-oriented corporation, but it must provide a material positive impact on society and the environment from its operations taken as a whole. The second change in California, and this is common in other states, is the fiduciary duties of directors are expanded to transcend and include just the focus on shareholders. So all of a sudden, directors have typically fiduciary duties to all of the corporation's stakeholders: employees, vendors and suppliers, the communities in which the corporation does business, society, and the environment. And these stakeholders are identified in the particular state laws. It varies a little bit from state to state, but the general rule of thumb with benefit corporation legislation is that the fiduciary duty of directors switches from a shareholder model to a multiple stakeholder model, which includes shareholders. And generally speaking, in most of these jurisdictions that have adopted the legislation, the only stakeholder that has standing to bring an enforcement action for a benefit corporation that fails to provide a public purpose is the shareholders. And generally speaking, there are no damages that can be won other than just an injunction to require the corporation to provide the public benefit. And this was designed to make it easy for businesses to adopt the new form, make it easier for lawyers like me to get over their fear of doing something new that may theoretically expose their clients to risk, and make it easy for this new form to spread. So transparency requires benefit corporations generally to measure their provision of a public benefit against a third-party standard. such as B Lab's certified B Corporation standard. So California's statute, for example, is pretty typical of benefit corporation legislation in that you either measure your provision of a material positive impact on society and the environment against a third-party standard, or you have a third-party standards body assess you using their standards. So you can either be assessed or assess yourself, but you have to measure your provision of that public benefit against a third-party standard. And this is designed to start to develop the reporting apparatus so that we can actually start measuring some of these intangibles that don't show up in traditional accounting. And finally, there's a requirement for accountability. So benefit corporations, generally speaking, are required to report how well they're doing in providing a material positive impact on society and the environment, at least annually, to generally their shareholders and in most cases to the public. So the California statute, for example, requires an annual report to shareholders that is also posted on the web. So, and again, on the fiduciary duty piece, this is the most significant shift, is that directors' fiduciary duties extend to all of the corporation's stakeholders, recognizing that corporations have a duty to be responsible global citizens. So what's really significant about the benefit corporation and this notion of a corporate conscience is that the current corporate form makes corporations prone to sociopathic behavior, because under stress, everything defaults to profit maximization. So you get strange behaviors. You get directors who are fabulous people. You know, they're kind to their wives and children. They donate to the United Way. They volunteer at their school. They're people of conscience. But then they get in a board of directors, and the collective conscience of that board defaults to the lowest common denominator, which is the victim that they have to act to maximize profits. So you get a lot of anomalous results. You get corporations that, you know, outsource operations to countries like China, and they may have a factory here that employs 500 people. It's been in a community for 30 years. It's a mainstay of the community. The employment roster provides, you know, a tax base for the state and local governments, and they decide to close the factory, hire a contract manufacturer in China. They'll use a consultant of some sort to get around the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. They'll pay the government officials to bribes to keep electricity running to the factory, or in some cases keep the streets open in front of the factory so that people can actually get to it. People in the subcontract manufacturer will be employed in labor conditions that have been illegal in this country for a long time, and the factory will ignore the environmental and, you know, regulations, and effluent will be put into the air and the water, like we did here in the valley before it became a giant Superfund site. And, you know, the consequence is that in China, for example, 71 out of 79 cities have air pollution that's so bad that expatriates that are working there have started sending their spouses and children home because it's just the conditions are too horrible to live there. So we get this really strange behavior where we're tending to externalize all of the negative consequences of corporate behavior, and it's somewhere out there. And, you know, the reality is we live in a massively interdependent global economic system, And, moving a factory to China to save some money and reduce your manufacturing costs, and while externalizing all the other costs on that environment, ultimately, we think it doesn't harm us, but it does. And there's no comprehensive conscience mechanism within the corporation to make it prone to anything other than that kind of behavioral result. So the benefit corporation puts legal architecture within the corporation that actually starts requiring the directors to begin to act with a social and environmental conscience that begins to be global in scope. So what's essentially happening with the benefit corporation is that we're quietly changing the global legal matrix. And the Anglo-Saxon corporate form that dates to the 1500s, that doesn't have any architecture of social and environmental conscience, has basically spread throughout the entire global economic system. And the benefit corporation is quietly providing an alternative legal matrix. Since I talked here last year, I think, 13 or 14 states have adopted benefit corporation legislation. We're up to 26. There are at least another 10 states that will probably adopt it by the end of the year. Delaware's adopted it. The District of Columbia, British Columbia just adopted a similar law last July. And the good news is that the form is spreading in the U.S. The first benefit corporation law was adopted in Maryland in 2010. Since 2010, over 500 businesses have incorporated as benefit corporations. Now that's a really small number. That's less than 1/100th of a percent of the 6 million corporations in America, but it's a start. And it's spreading fast. And again, you guys have really helped, by having me speak here last year and creating a video which didn't go viral, but it spread. You are helping get the word out about this new meme that is creating a foundation for a truly more sustainable economic system. And what's really fun is that transparency and accountability are spreading also. The leading third-party assessment standard is B Lab's Certified B Corporation assessment, which assesses businesses on their social and environmental impact. There are now over 1,000 certified B corporations in 32 countries. And transparency and accountability are spreading also. Over 17,000 businesses have gone online and taken B Lab's Certified B Corporation assessment. Pardon?
Benefit.
This is a point of great conclusion. Yeah?
Mike.
Oh, the mic, yes. I was.
Just repeat what you said.
Yeah. So what is a certified B corporation? So one of the most unfortunate things is that the leading assessment standard is B Lab, which is a not-for-profit that has sponsored a lot of the benefit corporation legislation nationally and has developed a third-party assessment standard. Calls companies, businesses that have passed their assessment certified B corporations. And a lot of people confuse or conflate a certified B corporation or a B Corp with a benefit corporation. And so it's really important to understand that a benefit corporation is a creature of statute. It's something that is a legal definition. Whereas a certified B corporation is simply a business that has passed the assessment. And it gets even more confusing because any business, regardless of the corporate form, can be assessed using the standard. So, for example, my law firm, which is a limited liability partnership, was certified as a certified B corporation. Limited liability companies can be certified as certified B corporations, even though they are not corporations. So it's a little bit unfortunate, but my point here is that this is, 17,000 businesses. That's more than 1/10 of 1% of corporations in America. So it's starting to, it's still not a statistically significant number, but it's gaining momentum. And the B Lab system is spreading into South America and Europe. And what's exciting is that countries in the European Union and South America are considering adopting the benefit corporation form or something similar. And transparency and accountability are spreading as well. So probably one of the most exciting developments is that European Parliament just passed a law which will require public companies with more than 500 employees to begin reporting on a triple bottom line basis, people, profit, and planet, in 2017. And this law is significant because it will have a ripple effect through these large public companies' supply chains. And even though the law applies to public corporations with more than 500 shareholders, it will affect corporations doing business with such companies, because those reporting companies will have to report what they're doing down their supply chain with their other partners, and whether those companies are also doing business on a triple bottom line basis. And most likely this European law will inspire the United States, and particularly the Securities and Exchange Commission, to begin to change the U.S. reporting requirements. And my prediction, I don't know when it will happen, but my guess is that, by 2019, maybe 2021, I would expect that the Securities and Exchange Commission will begin to require public companies to report on a triple bottom line basis. And what's interesting is that PricewaterhouseCoopers reported that I think 85% of the largest 300 companies in the world are already voluntarily reporting on sustainability. So this is, my sense is the paradigm really has shifted. And the question is, how can we give it as big a push as possible to have it be completed with the same speed that, say, the internet browser was adopted? I mean, this is a disrupting technology that's no different from a browser or a personal computer or a cell phone. And as we've seen with a lot of these disruptive technologies, they can go global and have a pretty high adoption rate very, very quickly. And I think there's the same potential for this corporate form. So that gives you a little bit of the background, okay? And what I just wanted to sort of set the stage. And before I continue, does anybody have any questions on benefit corporations? The lady here in the sweater.
Are there any tax benefits to these corporations?
Not yet, very few. There are a couple of cities, Philadelphia and I think San Francisco, that have given favorable contracting status or contracting preferences to businesses that want to do business with the city to benefit corporations.
Hi. Yeah, I have a question. First of all, I'd really like to have an idea of what this assessment is and what kinds of questions they ask them. And the other thing is, what if they are some huge company like Dow Chemical that creates horrible herbicides and does a lot of terrible things, and they don't pass? So does it get divided into nice corporations that did pass and they get to have like a blue ribbon, and then the bad corporations that don't pass and they should be shunned? Or I mean, what happens?
Well, that's a great question. So far there's no shunning list. So if a business passes the assessment, they get to use the certified B Corporation logo, and they get to join the community of 1,000 B corporations. There's not yet that I'm aware of, a public list of corporations like a Dow that probably wouldn't pass the assessment of those businesses that have taken the assessment or assessed themselves that didn't pass. Now, what's interesting is that there are not-for-profits that have sprung up that I've been following. Avaz is one of them, and Credo is another one, where I'm noticing an increased use of the web as a manifestation of a collective conscience. So there have been a lot of petitions, for example, circulated on Credo with respect to Walmart and the poor wages and benefits that they provide to people working for Walmart. So what I'm anticipating is that because information moves at light speed, and we really live in a glass house. I mean, everything we do is under the microscope. And I think probably the National Security Administration is probably somehow in this room with us now. I mean, there's no communication that goes by a device is not under some kind of scrutiny. So I suspect that increasingly whether a company is a good company or a bad company will be made public, and we consumers will have much greater tools at our disposal to help us make informed choices as to who we want to do business with.
So I'm sure this group over here can ask you questions till 12:15. I don't know if you want to answer a few more, or...
Well, I just wanted to know if there were any specific questions on benefit corporations before I continued. Just one more, or two more.
I noticed you said that if a state passes the laws regarding benefit corporations, where's the carrot and where's the stick? Or does that make it mandatory for a corporation to become a benefit corporation? And I assume that also the B Corp is the first step without being completely a benefit corporation. But I don't see where the carrot is and where's the stick.
Okay.
Okay.
It's a great question. Well, the carrot and the stick is probably represented in the Lifestyles of Health and Sustainability consumer group, which is, I think, somewhere between 60 and 80 million in this country. So there's a large base of us that really care about who we do business. And first of all, businesses that adopt a multiple stakeholder model actually outperform their conventional peers. So there's a lot of preliminary economic evidence that businesses that have a triple bottom line orientation outperform their peers and provide a better rate of return on investment. So they're solid economic reasons. And I think the main reason for adopting a benefit corporation form is that you're really putting your money where your mouth is. There are a lot of businesses, and last year we talked about Hewlett-Packard, right? Hewlett-Packard had the HP way, and it had a great corporate culture. But as soon as Hewlett-Packard retired, because that culture wasn't codified in articles and bylaws, and because it didn't have a benefit corporation structure, that culture and those values disappeared. And the danger of not incorporating in a benefit corporation form is that you can have a very socially responsible CEO and board of directors one minute, but you can get a private equity firm coming in the next minute. They don't care about sustainability or consciousness or anything other than their own profit. And that management team will be thrown out, and you're back to business as usual, maximizing profit for shareholders. And the benefit corporation form really requires a different mindset. It requires directors to balance profit and shareholder rights with effect on environment and planet and effect on people. And it really creates a different behavior, requires a different behavior over the long term. And I think people that really believe in this stuff, that want to create a business that really reflects their values, will choose, the benefit corporation form. And I think, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, your last question. Should the benefit corporation make those of us who are very disturbed about Citizens United feel better? Or what is the relationship?
Why don't we table that question for the discussion afterwards? That could be a whole nother talk. Okay, I'm going to pause here. I just want to get into the sort of the next leg of the presentation, which is to suggest that the benefit corporation, my sense is that it will go global. At some point in the next 10, 15, 20 years, maybe 5, we'll get to a tipping point. Every state will adopt it. Delaware's adopted it. Something similar will be adopted in Europe, and it will change how businesses are done. Unfortunately, we lawyers like to think that the law is everything, and again, the words in corporate codes do in fact influence behavior, but the people in the corporations have to change their mindset. And the significant thing about benefit corporations is they really do require a shift in consciousness of the leaders in business from, again, an egocentric focus on profits to much more of a global perspective. It's I to we to one. It's an enormous shift in consciousness. And one of the things that I learned, and I'm just going to give you a few principles of consciousness and the science of consciousness as it's applied to business. And one of the things I observed as a startup company lawyer is that the leader in any business generally sets the field of consciousness in the business. And this phenomenon is happening right here in this room in a pedagogical setting. For a short period of time, the person at the podium is generally in a leadership position. And so the field of consciousness that is present in this room is very similar to the field of consciousness that we would find in any startup company. And how those of you who are in the field that I am emanating feel is largely dependent on me and my state of being. And if I'm a fear-driven person who got completely undone by being late and was completely full of anxiety and panic, you guys would be having a very different experience of me right now. And I think you can go back to any place you've worked. If the leader is fearful or runs on greed, you know it. If the leader has stabilized his or her consciousness so that they're calm and centered, you know it. And the neuroscience basically shows that we all have a whole set of social neurons in our brains that whenever we're in a group, tune into the leader. We automatically scan the group. our brains do this automatically. It's part of our autonomous nervous system. We determine who the leader is. We determine what their mood is. We deduce what their values are. We deduce what the behavioral norms of that leader are. And ultimately, we tune in to their level and field of consciousness. And this phenomenon is the future of leadership. And my sense is benefit corporations change the form to support a higher level of consciousness. So the first principle that leaders must understand is that they set the field. And because the leader sets the field, the leader's got to understand how to optimize and stabilize their own consciousness, right? And that's what's going to be going mainstream, is mind training techniques. I mean, many of you have probably done meditation or yoga or some sort of a discipline. All of us are born with these incredible mind-body apparatus that have the computational power of 500 of the world's largest supercomputers hardwired together. I mean, IBM will tell you to emulate what our brain does in 1 second, it would take 30 billion watts of power and 500 of the world's largest supercomputers hardwired together. Each one of us is walking around with that kind of firepower, but we're not born with an operating instruction for this thing. And we have this ancient limbic system that it hardwires us to look for danger. So our reptile brain, the amygdala and the limbic system, basically renders all of us walking danger detectors. So when we come to the office and the boss is in a bad mood and is fearful, we know it in about 3 nanoseconds, and we're going to be off all day. If the boss has figured out how to return to center, when they get triggered, if they can come back to center, if they can make the subject-object move, as Bob Keegan at Harvard calls it, where you make your thoughts and emotions object and you find that calm center place, you can emanate a field of consciousness within your business that is optimized for human performance. And, you know, in order to be effective in doing this, a leader really has to understand the context of consciousness and developmental theories, the science of consciousness. There's a movement afoot called conscious capitalism. We talked a little bit about it last year. In my opinion, it's nothing more than the HP way on steroids. It's a great start, and it's a fabulous marketing campaign for ethics and values in business. And the 4 tenets of conscious capitalism are a multiple stakeholder model, the leader as a steward of the ecosystem, corporation has a heroic purpose, and the culture is values-based. But there is not a nuanced understanding of consciousness. And what is coming into business is an understanding of the arc of development of consciousness that we humans go through in our lifetimes. In child development, there are well-articulated stages of development that have been incorporated into just about every school curriculum. Well, we don't stop developing after we get out of college or grad school. And if we're lucky, over the course of our lifetime, our consciousness evolves from being egocentric to other-centric, to being we-centric, to being concerned about the whole planet. And our consciousness generally goes from being ruled by the limbic system to being stabilized somewhere in the frontal cortex and being thought and logic driven, to ultimately, if we're lucky, our consciousness will drop into our body and be centered in the heart. So there's a number of developmental theories, you know, ranging from Ken Wilber's integral theory to spiral dynamics, Don Beck, Bob Keegan at Harvard's got a theory. But the general gist of these theories is that they give us a framework to understand how our consciousness evolves. And what I've observed from working with startups is that not only do we individuals have a level of consciousness and an arc of development, but all of our tribes, all of our groups have a collective level of consciousness and a collective consciousness. And again, that level of consciousness, generally speaking, is set by the leader. And what we're asking for with the Benefit Corporation is a shift, a really significant shift. If you look at any of these developmental theories, the transit from egocentricity to other centricity to we to one and the planet, that's a monumental journey. It's very, very difficult. And it requires new skills, new perspectives. And what we've quietly put into the global matrix is legal matrix is a corporate form that actually, in some ways, is designed to require people to start acting in a way that invites in a much higher level of consciousness than the egocentric collective corporation that focuses solely on profits. Finally, what's really exciting is that leaders must understand the difference between love and fear. My friend Paul Zak at the Claremont McKenna Graduate School in Southern California is a neuroscientist who studies basically the effect of love in the workplace. And what Paul has found is that when we human beings work in environments where we're loved and trusted, our brains produce oxytocin, which is a bonding chemical, and dopamine, which makes us feel happy. And our attention stays in the frontal cortex, where we tend to be able to access the higher brain faculties such as creativity, cooperation, collaboration, and we stay out of the limbic system, where we get triggered in fight or flight and have releases of cortisol and adrenaline, which basically take us out of present moment awareness and make us dumb. Every time you get a fight or flight response, the blood goes out of your frontal cortex, into your legs, into your low back, and automatic defense reactive behaviors kick in. You're no longer present. So what Paul found is that in environments where people are loved and trusted, where they feel safe, where the leader has set a harmonious field of consciousness, people are twice as productive, they're twice as happy, they work twice as long in terms of their tenure, and the business is much more prone to achieve that kind of collective flow state that our human collectives, such as bands or choirs or sports teams, will occasionally get into when they fire on all cylinders. So what's really, really exciting is that the Benefit Corporation is really changing the foundation that will support a much higher level of consciousness to emerge in business. And it could happen very, very quickly. This is the big vision, is that benefit corporations could lead to a love-based economy based on love of stakeholders, society, and the environment. Right now we have businesses that focus their love, their attention on profits. And what the Benefit Corporation does is begin to shift that so it makes business safe for love, because you not only take care of your shareholders, but you take care of the communities in which you do business, society, and the environment. And again, this could be an enormous shift. So the big vision lurking behind all of this is, what would the world look like if all 6 million corporations in America and all 6 million corporations in Europe became benefit corporations and began to act with a social and environmental conscience, we'd have a very, very different world, and it would happen very quickly. So, call to action. What can you guys do? Do business with certified B corporations. That's one way to do it. Go to the Benefit Corporation or the B Lab website, bcorporation.net. There's all kinds of information there. Encourage corporations that you're involved with to either become certified as a certified B corporation, or better yet, convert to become a benefit corporation, and spread the word. Really get the word out. One of the things I'd love to ask you guys to do for me is, you helped me get in front of probably 4,000 people last year at speaking events. I mean, my talk to you last year led to many, many invitations to speak. And so, if you could endorse me on LinkedIn as a speaker, that would be fabulous. But you all can really spread the word and spread this meme. One final remark, just to imagine, what would it be like? Remember when Google came out with Do No Evil?
They've retracted it.
They really have retracted it. They've shown that moniker was pretty disingenuous. What if a company like Google or Apple dared to become the first iconic public company to become a benefit corporation?
Is that even possible? I mean,
It's possible.
every shareholder would have to. There'd have to be a shareholder offering to get.
There would be there would be a.
It would be like going private.
It wouldn't be going private because you'd still remain a public company, but it would. Oh yes.
Sorry.
But I think there's a huge opportunity for a public company to really take the lead and show the world that they are truly committed to acting as a responsible global citizen. So anyway, I think I'll stop there, and we have some time for questions.
Okay, yes, thank you. So I'm in the back here. I have the mic. I'm going to ask the first question, then I'm going to give it over here, and then I'm going to find everybody with a hand, so keep it up. Just very quickly, we have about 4 minutes. What keeps a cap and trade deal from coming in here and letting leaders of companies off the hook? They can just pay some money and get this people and planet thing taken care of while they keep focusing on profit. That keeps them in the same psyche, but they pay off this aspect.
Well, that's why I think it's really, really important. People underestimate the power of the word, and there's sort of two components. One is, if you have a benefit corporation structure, if you're incorporated as a benefit corporation, you are legally required to provide a material positive impact on society and the environment. There's really no way around greenwashing. And the second thing that you can do, and I talk about it in chapter 20 in my book, is you can actually customize the legal architecture of your company to put your values as a code of conduct in your bylaws. So there are ways of designing legal architecture in your business through both the benefit corporation form and some custom drafting to really design your company so that it's a responsible global citizen with a global conscience.
I thought it's a great presentation, and I like your emphasis on global consciousness. I think we need to think of ourselves as one human family, and get beyond the business of nationalism and what's good for our country, what's good for the planet and human family as a whole. And we need laws, changes in the laws to make it work. I think you mentioned the European Parliament. I think we need a world parliament. Eventually we have to move in that direction of a system of world law, a law that works for everybody, and with appropriate sticks and carrots. And I guess I want to ask a nuts and bolts question. Is there anything in Congress going on to change have this triple bottom line, require corporations to comply with the triple bottom line? Is that going on? And another thing is about enforcement. When there's corporate violations of law, often the corporation is fined of maybe $100 million. It's a multi-billion-dollar corp. It's a slap on the hand. And corporate executives who may be responsible are not going to jail for it. It seems to me you need to hold individuals responsible rather than punish a corporation.
Let me just pop in here for a second. We probably have time for maybe one more question after you answer this one. If you didn't get your question answered, remember we have the speaker table in the middle, so go ahead and join him there after you get your lunch.
Yeah, I think on the accountability issue, personally, I would have loved to have seen more teeth in the enforcement provisions of benefit corporation legislation. But having been through the legislative process in California, what I can tell you is that the amount of fear that this law engenders with the corporate status quo is unbelievable. And most people, when they really understand what a benefit corporation does, they ask the painfully obvious question is, why shouldn't every corporation be a benefit corporation? I mean, duh, this makes total sense. But the unfortunate reality is there's so much resistance in the system that in order to make this form available, we had to make the enforcement remedies reliant on the court of public opinion. So generally speaking, a shareholder of a benefit corporation can bring an enforcement action if the corporation fails to provide a material positive impact on society and the environment. There will be injunctive relief. A court will order the company to comply, and the law essentially relies on the court of public opinion and the fact that we're living in an increasingly transparent world and people are going to vote with their pocketbook. I mean, I think ultimately corporations are going to get terrified that if they don't get with the sustainability and conscious business program, they're going to lose business. And that's ultimately where it's going to go. But we had to start, again, anytime you change a system, it triggers a fight or flight response in the brain, literally. And you have to minimize the resistance. So generally speaking, the benefit corporation, wherever it's been adopted, is a voluntary opt-in form that doesn't threaten the status quo. People can opt in, and everybody in the status quo can remain doing what they're doing, business as usual. And what we're relying on is that some iconic companies will emerge, like Patagonia, which is probably the most famous of the benefit corporations, will emerge as thought leaders in this space and inspire everybody else to come along.
Can you give a couple of examples of things that are measured when somebody applies to be a certified B corporation?
Yeah. So there are several categories. How well do you treat your employees? Is there profit sharing? What kind of benefits do you offer? Do you offer employees paid days off to go volunteer for Habitat for Humanity? Do you subsidize alternative transportation? Do you give employees a bonus to use mass transit or ride or carpool or ride a bike, walk to work? There's an environmental assessment. Are you using, is your office powered by renewable energy? Are you using efficient light bulbs? How are you using recycled paper? Are you using recycled suppliers? And what sorts of things are you doing for your community? So on and so forth. So there's several levels, of assessment. And again, these assessments are in their infancy. And there's a lot of work going on globally to change the accounting from the traditional profit and loss orientation where things like environmental impact and social impact don't show up. So the whole field is evolving as we speak.
I was going to ask a little bit more about this kind of nebulous term of positive impact, particularly around sustainability. I know that sustainability, I had a lot of hope coming forward when I first started college, 10 years ago. Oh, well, everybody's going to start jumping on this, and then started realizing it started becoming a Prius sustainability, where you buy this and it'll make you feel good. I know that same sort of, I know you talked a little bit about consciousness, but I know that sort of mentality is the easy kind of way forward when you're thinking about sustainability. I know it's going to be pervasive, especially at the higher levels in the corporation, when you're so used to profit maximization, then you're talking about efficiency. All right, I'm going to be working with a limited set of data. I need to act quickly. I still want to do the best thing possible, so where can I shovel my money? But we might see this with like the Gates Foundation. Okay, you start out with good goals, but you're applying the same sort of technocratic ideas to problems that maybe don't have simple solutions. So I'm wondering if there's any sort of hope around these sorts of really sticky issues. The idea, do people know what they're getting themselves into when you start actually thinking holistically?
Yeah, well, there are two, let me sort of give you a bifurcated answer. So my belief is that your generation gets this stuff the way my generation is still resisting it. And so my belief is that the next generation of entrepreneurs is going to take this stuff and run with it, and you guys will build iconic companies from the ground up that incorporate these principles from the get-go. It's much harder to take a company like Apple. Let's imagine if Apple became a benefit corporation, right? You've got a board of directors that is in profit maximization mentality. You've got, for the most part, a C-suite of executive officers that are in a profit maximization mentality. You've got, I think, a vice president of sustainability or operations, whatever, who's charged with sustainability. So you've got a beachhead for this kind of thinking within Apple. And you also have, my former law firm, Wilson Sonsini, is one of the advisors to Apple. And they are in the Milton Friedman camp of profit maximization. So you've got the collective mindset of a company like Apple is so embedded with profit maximization that it will take probably a large management consulting and leadership consulting company to literally go in and rewire the thinking and mindset of each member of the C-suite and board of directors. That's a tough job, right? And it's going to happen. There are companies, Novo Nordisk in Denmark, has been thinking this way for a long time. So there are companies that have visionary leaders that are inspired to go this way. Richard Branson, he's somebody who would be ripe for this. The people that run Unilever, they own Ben & Jerry's, which is one of the iconic benefit corporations. Unilever is looking seriously at becoming a seriously sustainable company by 2020, and they're ripe for this. So it's going to take, remember the principle that the leader sets the field of consciousness. And you've got to have a chairman of the board on the board who's setting the field of consciousness in that boardroom. And you've got to have your president aligned with these principles, because he's generally he or she's the person that sets the field within the C-suite. So you've got to have the hearts and minds of the leadership, and they have to be thinking and acting and embodying a global consciousness that balances society, environment, and profit. And that's, all of a sudden, people have to juggle three balls. I learned how to juggle as a freshman. I learned how to flip a beer bottle cap and juggle freshman year. And, you know, when you start learning how to juggle, you're dropping the balls all the time. That's the move that we're asking directors all across the planet to start making. Instead of just juggling one ball, maximize profit, they have to juggle three: maximize profit, maximize positive impact on society, and maximize positive impact on the environment. And it's not that hard once you get the hang of it. It's just a new balancing test. But getting people to make that shift in mindset, huge difficulty. That's where the resistance comes.